If you're someone that loves to travel and take photos and videos, whether you're a professional photographer or even just a hobbyist, walking through woods, cities, hiking through parks and trails and mountains, then I promise this list is for you. I've been fortunate enough to travel around quite a bit. I think 16 or 17 countries in total now, we'll call it 16. And many of those have been in Europe. But I was fortunate to tour all over Europe, the US, and Canada in a punk band in my 20s and 30s. Which I'm not saying is the best way to travel, but more recently, since starting my business, I've been hired and paid to shoot photos and videos for a culinary travel company in Europe as well. So although I don't claim to be a world traveler, I do have some experience with being paid to travel and doing things that a typical tourist wouldn't be able to do. So let's get right to it. Here's part one of my list of best underrated photography destinations and hidden gems in Europe, with some bonus food tips too. Let's start our list in northern Italy. Yes, Rome, Venice, Umbria, Sorrento, and Positano and the Amalfi Coast are incredible, but I raise you northern Italy. Flying to Milan, and from there it's only a 1-hour ride to our first underrated stop. Nestled in the Alpine Lombardy region of northern Italy, Bergamo, specifically the photogenic Città Alta, or Upper Town, is sensational. Like many Italian or even European cities and towns, it's walkable, has great cafes, restaurants, culture, and history. Now, I actually stayed outside of town at my buddy's mother-in-law's house in the mountains, but after researching rates for some of the nicest hotels in Città Alta, I was amazed to find out how affordable they were. Just one of the many bonuses that northern Italy, outside of the teeming tourist hubs, will provide you. And if you do drive just outside of town, I mean, you can literally pull over anywhere, just not on the windy, skinny mountain roads, to take landscape, architectural, and street photography. If you're able to get a drone up, the backdrop of the Arobic or Bergamasque Alps, Alpi Arobi, however you say it, it's a reminder of how impressively beautiful this entire region is. Heading east for another hour or so drive is our second gem in northern Italy. I know everyone says Como, 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 but I'm sticking with Lake Garda. It's the largest lake in Italy, has incredible views, and most importantly, Rocco's Pizza. This is my first bonus foodie tip. Comparing this pizza to other pizzas I've had is a little bit like comparing apples to oranges, because the way they make the dough is so unique. But I stand before you today, or sit actually, and I swear this was one of the best meals I've had in my life. My only regret is I was only able to spend one full day and night in Garda, and probably would have 10 more recommendations from there had I stayed longer. But you can take a boat tour to the island castle in the middle of the lake, or just walk around the town and explore, and you'll be overwhelmed at how many great photo spots there are in Lake Garda. Pressing on, and I'm abandoning this thing in driving order, plan your own trip, but this is where it gets really good. Our next stop, our third underrated gem is located in the Carnia mountain area of Friuli, and the first thing that stood out to me was the architecture. So you have these incredibly prominent Austrian-Swiss influences, makes sense due to where it sits on a map, but give me a camera and put me in front of an Italian church built with Austrian architectural influences, with a backdrop of lakes and the snow-capped Carnic Alps, and I'm sold. What more do you need as a photographer? But the best part of the day in Saudis was straight out of a fairy tale. It was a visit to a small hut on a mountainside for lunch. You walk in and the owner is making his own spirits from local herbs that seasonally grow on the mountain. These two little nonas are in the kitchen arguing over how to cook, and their three-legged dog is begging for a piece of boar ragu to spill over. But the thing I remember most was walking into this hut and smelling the smoke of 100,000 fires clinging to the walls. It smelled like tradition, like generation after generation of chefs, of family, passed these recipes and traditions down to their children and their children's children. So as beautiful visually as it was, something deep within was activated by that experience based on really smell alone. Side note, legend has it that two exhausted German mercenaries first settled Saudis around 1300. True or not, it's one of the best places I've ever been to in Italy, Europe, or quite frankly, the entire world, especially with a camera in hand. You're not gonna find many tourists there. Disclaimer as I move on, none of the aforementioned hidden gems and destinations I've listed, or I'm about to list, are objectively underrated. It's all relative. I'm just saying that people know about many of these places, but I think they're unknown enough to warrant a deeper dive. They usually won't pop up in your 10 best places to visit lists and are off the radar for most people traveling. So from a photography perspective, these are the destinations that I personally crave. Our next underrated destination is the aforementioned, specifically Cividale del Friuli. But before we get there, and if you choose to go, stay with Giampaolo at Veneca Veneca Wine Resort. I mean, I don't even drink, and when I did, I can assure you that elegant wines were lost on me. But if you're thinking that, oh, a wine resort and luxurious villa in the hills of Friuli is going to be astronomical in terms of price, yeah, I've seen Airbnbs in Harrisburg, PA that cost more per night. Anyways, from a photographer's perspective, this region is rural in the most charming and perfect way. It's just a few short miles, or kilometers, from the Slovenian border. You can get your running shoes on or grab a bike and hoof it or pedal right into Slovenia. I did it.
Okay, guess we're in Slovenia now.
Although I suppose that's the American equivalent of running from PA into Delaware, but there is something special about running from one country into another, past an abandoned concrete border guard house, through quiet villages and a sea of vineyards on curved roads that hug the rivers flowing with blue-gray alpine water. But to stay on task, a mere 15-minute drive brings us to Cividale del Friuli. The views in this town are only matched by its history, a cultural history, military history, and fantastic legend and lore. The highlight is the Devil's Bridge, with its central pillar constructed on top of a natural rock formation. Legend says that in exchange for completing the bridge, which the citizens were having trouble doing, they asked the devil for help. The devil's payment was the soul of the first person to cross the newly constructed bridge. So the citizens did what anyone would do. They dressed a dog, or a cat in some legends, in human clothes to fool the devil. I was fortunate to be able to do a guided tour of the town. Admittedly, I missed some of the factoids as I was being paid to film and photograph the trip. But I do remember something to the effect of people on either side of this bridge, we're talking within meters, within shouting distance, spoke completely different dialects. Overall, that's actually somewhat common in Italy, and I've seen it in other countries too, but so much so that they said there were entirely different words for everyday common things, and even challenges with understanding someone who might live the equivalent of 2 blocks away. The Italians actually blew up this bridge to slow the Austrian advance in 1917 at the end of the First World War, and it was rebuilt the next year. Something about all of this history, culture, and legend just makes the place that much more interesting to photograph. And this is the charm of Northern Italy. When you see architecture, cuisine, and language rapidly shift by traveling only a few minutes, or miles, from town to town. Bonus tip, if you're a foodie and don't mind shelling out the coin, Hisa Franco would be your plans for dinner one night. Chef Anna Rose and her restaurant, Hisa Franco, were featured in Chef's Table Season 2, Episode 5. Top 3 dinner of my life. It was 22 courses after all. I think she was the first woman to ever earn a Michelin star, and Hisa Franco has since earned 3 Michelin stars, and she was named Best Female Chef in the World, so no big deal. My next gem is... So this one is intertwined with the family, restaurant, and activity we did there. But sitting about an hour southwest of Bologna is the quiet town of Savigno. The overall region, Emilia-Romagna, is a gastronomy hub known for production of Parma ham, Parmesan, Grana Padano, and Modena balsamic vinegar. But I digress. A bucket list item was checked off, which was a truffle hunt. A father-son duo, Guido and Amadeo, took us into the hills to hunt for truffles with one of their dogs, Daisy. I actually thought she was a puppy, but she was 11. I attribute that to her diet. I'll let them explain.
What do they feed the dogs?
Cosa dà da mangiare il cane? Le crocchette, giusto?
No, anche del fegato, cuore,
Liver, heart, dog
un po' di
food.
carcasse macinate di pollo, un po' un mix.
Ah, le carcasse?
Sì,
And like
macinate.
chicken bones that have been ground up?
Raw or
E
cooked?
poi tartufo a
Le
volontà.
carcasse di pollo cotto?
Sì, no,
Crudo.
tritata.
Sì, ma la ossa cruda? Sì. No, raw, the bone's raw.
What was amazing about this process was I thought they would have the dog on the lead and give her commands the entire time, but they really just let her roam and do her thing. They know the land, she knows the land, and although commands were given, it was remarkable how they trusted the dog's scent and experience to find these diamonds of the kitchen. For example, the dogs are actually trained to dig with 1 paw instead of 2 if they find what are called crazy truffles. These aren't the kind you and I eat, but the dogs still like them.
This is come si chiama
Crazy truffle.
il terzo fumato?
Crazy truffle.
It's called the crazy truffle.
When they find a regular truffle, the trifalau, or truffle hunters, cover up the ground where it was picked to allow the spores to regenerate and grow again. It's a balance and respect for the land that is truly awesome to watch. Traditions, teachings, and knowledge passed down for
Poi ci
generations.
serviamo in un'altra bollata che dovrebbe essere buona.
Okay. We're going in other valley here,
Yeah.
near here. It's too good for truffle, and we're going to other bollata. Bollata is a place where a truffle hunter find every year the truffle.
You just have to see it to appreciate it. But after the truffle hunt, we headed back to the family restaurant, La Bottega de Massaio. I don't know how to say that. Guido's wife Anna handmade us pasta with a southern Italian influence since she was originally from there.
Poco la pasta all'uovo.
She said in Sicily they use very, very little pasta with eggs, like I was telling you guys before.
Guido butchered one of his cows the day before. And there was something else that we had that I can't remember. It was aged and encased for 40 days in a white truffle butter. I mean, the whole thing was otherworldly. And we ended it with Amedeo giving us a private concert.
Sembra di sentire il rumore di una nave sulle onde. Si muove la città con le piazze, i giardini e la gente nei bar. Galleggia e se ne va, anche senza corrente.
The phrase once in a lifetime gets thrown around a lot, but for me, this was it. So again, the views are beautiful and the place is photogenic, but it's the people, the culture, the tradition that makes it so special to capture with photography and video. So many things surprised me while traveling around northern Italy. Awesome cocktail bars, damn near ancient restaurants, dining rooms and speakeasy-type basements, artillery and ammunition holes in buildings and churches from the battles in the street during World War II, a pigeon graveyard at the base of a bell tower from peregrine falcons dive bombing them. My expectations tend to become warped when I've come from somewhere bucolic and enter a city like every other. Ultimately, this is why I consider all these places underrated, because hiding around every corner is something unique. If you look a little closer, there's always something special to see. You're so far removed from the touristy spots, but are still left with an experience I promise you'll never forget. It's overstating the obvious that picturesque and beautiful places are most photographers' dream. We all know that. But more importantly, interesting and knowledgeable people, great food, history, architecture, and unique experiences, that's what makes a place special to visit, from a photo or filming perspective. Capturing that is where the real magic lies. All right, hope you enjoyed that list. Part 2 is coming soon.